Welcome aboard, time travelers. This is Giggletown TV's time travel adventure. Picture this. A family just like yours, but with a twist. They've built a time machine right in their backyard. Yes, you heard it right, a real functioning time machine. Now, they're ready to embark on an adventure that will take them through the annals of history, from the prehistoric era to the far reaches of the future. Imagine seeing a T-Rex up close or standing alongside the ancient Egyptians as they build the pyramids. Picture yourself in a medieval castle or witnessing the first moon landing. All this and more is possible with time travel. Each episode, we'll visit a new era, discovering fascinating facts and meeting incredible characters along the way. It's going to be a whirlwind ride, packed with fun, learning, and plenty of surprises. So buckle up, because we're about to take a wild ride through time. First stop, the age of the dinosaurs. Welcome to the Jurassic period, a time when the Earth was ruled by colossal creatures. Picture a world so different from ours. Lush green forests, vast oceans, and towering mountains. And amidst it all, the dinosaurs, the true kings and queens of this era. Did you know that the word dinosaur means terrible lizard? But don't let that name fool you. Not all dinosaurs were terrifying. Some were no bigger than a chicken, while others were as tall as a 5-story building. Imagine a creature so large, you'd have to crane your neck just to see its head. Now, let's talk about their home. The Jurassic world was teeming with life. The air was warmer, and the land was dotted with ferns, pines, and the first ever flowering plants. Oceans were filled with giant marine reptiles, and the skies echoed with the calls of pterosaurs, the first animals other than insects to fly. And what about food? Herbivores, like the long-necked Brachiosaurus, munched on the leaves of tall trees, while carnivores, such as the fearsome Allosaurus, hunted for their next meal. But don't worry, we're safe in our time machine. One more fascinating fact before we scoot. Have you ever wondered how we know so much about these ancient creatures? Think the fossils. Fossils are like nature's time capsules, preserving the past for us to discover. We've had quite the adventure in the Jurassic period, haven't we? We've learned about the dinosaurs, their habitat, and what the world looked like during that time. But hold on to your hats, because our journey isn't over yet. Phew, that was a close call with that T-Rex, wasn't it? Now let's scoot to our next destination. Hold on tight. We're zapping back to ancient Egypt. We've landed smack dab in the middle of an era filled with towering pyramids, powerful pharaohs, and mysterious mummies. Can you feel the desert heat on your face? Or is that just the excitement of time travel? Now let's talk pyramids, the architectural marvels of the ancient world. Did you know that the Great Pyramid of Giza, built for the pharaoh Khufu, was the tallest man-made structure for over 3,800 years? That's a longer reign than any pharaoh could dream of. These pyramids weren't just showy monuments, though. They were tombs for the pharaohs, built to guide their souls to the afterlife. And speaking of pharaohs, these rulers were believed to be gods on earth. They wore double crowns to represent their rule over Upper and Lower Egypt, and their word was law. But when a pharaoh's earthly journey ended, they were mummified, their bodies preserved for the afterlife. The process of mummification was a complex one, involving the removal of organs, drying the body out, and wrapping it in layers of linen. Now, let's take a quick detour to the world of hieroglyphics. These were the written words of ancient Egypt, a system of symbols that told stories, recorded history, and conveyed complex ideas. And here's a fun fact for you. The word hieroglyphics comes from the Greek words hieros, meaning sacred, and glyphi, meaning carving. Sacred carvings. Isn't that cool? Before we leave, let's pay a visit to the Great Sphinx, half human and half lion. This colossal statue has been guarding the Giza Plateau for millennia. Its enigmatic smile, a symbol of the mysteries of ancient Egypt. Wow, those pyramids are a sight to behold. But we're not done yet. Let's zoom to our next time period. And here we are in the Middle Ages. Welcome to a time of knights and castles, a period often referred to as the Middle Ages. This era, spanning from the 5th to the 15th century, was a time of grandeur and gallantry, where knights in shining armor were the superheroes of the day. They were bound by a code of chivalry, upholding values of honor, courage, and loyalty. Now imagine a castle tall and majestic, with towering walls and a deep, wide moat. These fortresses weren't just homes for kings and queens, but also served as a defense against enemy attacks. Living in these castles, we'd find the feudal system at work. This was a social structure where the king or queen granted land, known as fiefs, to their loyal nobles in exchange for military service. The nobles in turn had peasants or serfs working on their lands. It was a complex system of loyalty and obligation, but it wasn't all about battles and land. The Middle Ages were also a time of unique food and fashion. Did you know that during a grand feast, a peacock might be served as a symbol of immortality? Now that's a bird of a different feather. As for fashion, well, it was all about layers. For the nobles, they wore tunics over long shirts, topped with cloaks fastened by brooches. The peasants, on the other hand, wore simpler clothing made of wool. But whether you were a noble or a peasant, everyone wore a coif, a close-fitting cap to keep their heads warm. The Middle Ages were indeed a fascinating era, brimming with tales of chivalry, grand feasts, and magnificent castles. It was a time of knights and nobles, peasants and serfs, all living under the banner of the king or queen. That's enough jousting for one day, don't you think? Time to blast off to our next stop. Get ready for some fireworks. We're landing in the American Revolution. Whoosh! Here we are, smack dab in the middle of one of the most pivotal periods in history, the American Revolution. This was a time when 13 British colonies decided they'd had enough of the old ways and wanted to become their own independent nation. Can you imagine the courage that took? Let's talk about some of the extraordinary individuals who played a significant role in this revolution. These are the Founding Fathers, a group of men who had the audacity to dream of a new nation. People like George Washington, the first president of the United States, or Thomas Jefferson, who wrote the first draft of the Declaration of Independence. Speaking of the Declaration of Independence, it's a pretty big deal. It was a letter to Britain, essentially saying, "We're breaking up with you and we're going to be our own country now." Bold move, right? And who can forget the Boston Tea Party? No, it wasn't a fancy tea party with biscuits and crumpets. It was a protest where American colonists, frustrated and angry at Britain for imposing what they believed were unfair taxes, dumped 342 chests of British tea into the harbor. Talk about a brewing storm! But it wasn't all protests and declarations. There were battles and hardships, too. The Revolutionary War was fought from 1775 to 1783, and it was a tough 8 years. But in the end, the colonies won their independence and the United States of America was born. It's fascinating to think that these events shaped the world we live in today. The courage, the determination, and the vision of those involved in the American Revolution continues to inspire us. What an exciting time to be alive, but we're not done yet. Fasten your seatbelts for our next leap in time. And now we're rocketing into the space age. Buckle up, folks, as we're about to embark on a journey that's out of this world, literally. Our first stop is the moon. Oh, look at that barren, rocky surface. This is where, in the summer of 1969, astronauts Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin made history by being the first humans to walk on the moon. A moment that was watched by millions back on Earth. It was a triumphant victory in the space race that had been heating up between the United States and the Soviet Union. Speaking of astronauts, let's take a moment to appreciate these brave men and women. Suited up in their bulky spacesuits, they venture into the great unknown, exploring the final frontier for all of us. It's not all moonwalks and floating around, though. Astronauts train for years, learning about everything from spaceship mechanics to the effects of zero gravity on the human body. Now, let's zoom out a bit to the International Space Station, or the ISS as it's commonly called. Orbiting the Earth at a speed of about 5 miles per second, this space station is a joint venture of multiple countries and serves as a home and laboratory for astronauts. And here's a fun fact for you. Did you know that in space, astronauts can't cry because there's no gravity to pull the tears down? Instead, the tears just build up in little blobs and make the astronauts' eyes sting. Ouch! Life in space is full of such interesting quirks. With no up or down, astronauts often get disoriented. They drink from special pouches because regular cups would just send liquid floating around. And let's not forget about the space food. Vacuum sealed and ready to eat. It's a far cry from a home-cooked meal. That was one small step for man, one giant leap for our time-traveling family, but now it's time to head back to our own time. So, hold on tight as we leave the space age behind and warp back to the present. There's no place like home after all. And just like that, we're back in the present day. What an adventure we've had, journeying through time and space right from the comfort of our own home. We've seen the towering giants of the Jurassic era, all those dinosaurs in their natural habitat. Can you believe they were the rulers of the Earth millions of years ago? And remember when we learned about the Triceratops, the three-horned wonder, and the mighty Tyrannosaurus Rex, the king of the dinosaurs? Then we whisked ourselves away to the magnificent deserts of Egypt, where we marveled at the ancient pyramids and the Sphinx. We even met some pharaohs and found out how they built those massive structures without any modern technology. Our time machine then took us to the medieval times, where we experienced the thrill of a jousting tournament and visited a real castle. We learned about knights, their armor, and their code of chivalry. We didn't stop there, did we? We zoomed forward to the Revolutionary era, where we saw how people fought for their rights and freedom. We learned about the brave heroes who shaped the world as we know it today. And finally, we ventured into the space age, where we saw the first man walk on the moon. We learned about astronauts, rockets, and how science has helped us explore the final frontier. Each stop on our time-traveling journey offered us unique insights and fun facts about different periods of history. But now we want to hear from you. Where would you like to go next? The Ice Age, the Wild West, or maybe even the future? You're the co-pilot on this adventure, and we can't wait to see where your imagination takes us. So, leave us a comment with your suggestions, and remember, every journey begins with a single step, or in our case, a push of a button. Thanks for joining us on this incredible journey through time. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and tell us where you want to go next. Until next time, keep exploring and keep giggling. Before we say goodbye, let's have a little sing-along to celebrate our adventure. Are you ready? Get your voices warmed up because we're about to embark on a musical journey through time. Start singing. We started off in a world so grand where dinosaurs roamed the land. We saw T-Rex and Triceratops too, in a time so old everything was new. Then we zipped to the pyramids of old, where pharaoh stories were bold. We saw Sphinx and hieroglyphs bright under the Egyptian moonlight. Next, we ventured to the Middle Ages, where knights and queens filled the pages. We danced at the royal ball in the castle's grand hall. We then zoomed to the time of revolution, where ideas sparked a new solution. We saw patriots brave and free, shaping our world's history. Off we blasted to the space age next, where astronauts passed the test. We saw stars and galaxies far from the window of our spaceship car. And then we returned home. Sweet home. No more through time to roam. We learned, we laughed, we saw, we played. Oh, what a wonderful day we've made. Remember, each moment in our history has its own story, and each story is a song waiting to be sung. So keep singing, keep exploring, and keep dreaming. Now, let's sing the chorus one more time, all together now. Sings chorus. We learned, we laughed, we saw, we played. Oh, what a wonderful day we've made. And with that, our sing-along send-off comes to an end. But don't worry, this isn't the end of our time-traveling adventures. There are so many more places to go, so many more times to explore, and so many more songs to sing. Thanks for singing along, time travelers. Until our next adventure, stay curious and never stop exploring.